Hollis Meminger, cinematographer for Younger. After being mistaken for younger than she really is, a single mother decides to take the chance and reboot her career and her love life as a 26-year-old. We're now 7 seasons into Younger. Hollis, I know this was your first season as cinematographer on the show. I guess, like, what was your, you've worked on it before, but like, what was your approach as going into this as the cinematographer? I guess, how did you approach this final season?
You work for Darren Star. You have to approach it however Darren Star wants you to. There were a couple of factors that I guess came into play. I started the show as a focus puller actually, and I left for a couple of seasons and came back as an operator. And I believe like the latter part of season 5, I was shooting a lot of the second units. And I would trade off with John Thomas, who was the original DP. And then I guess in between COVID and the show starting, he ended up retiring and asked me if I wanted to shoot the show. So a lot of it was more like keep it in line with what John Thomas had already created, keep it in line with the Darren Star show. All of that was sort of the predictors of how to approach it, but at the same time, giving it its own new season and new feel and new look in most places, but for the most part, keeping it in line with what the show's sort of palette already was, and just sort of pushing it because it was the final season.
Yeah, so I guess how did you decide you wanted to push it? Because like I think it does, like you said, like it does look like similar. Anybody watching the show would say like this is a younger episode, but I do think it does have a little bit of a, it just looks slightly different. So I guess can you talk about in a good way? Can you talk about like how you accomplished that? Yeah.
Well, we having switched formats in terms of directors. Usually we have more directors, and because of COVID, we only had 3. And I guess each one of them asked them that very question, like, can we push the envelope? Can we do some more camera movement? Can we add more flares, like wherever we could? And that's something that we didn't do a lot of prior to this season. And I think it was a good approach because everyone was open to it. It's like, it's our last season. We have to do, whatever we can to make it look a little bit different. And also, we had Hillary Duff, so there are a couple of things going on there that we had to accommodate for. So a lot of the show, it sort of organically had to look a little bit different and had to go in a different direction, based on the things that we're dealing with, and especially COVID. I mean, we shot a lot more close-ups than we usually do. Just because of, background people that weren't part of the show, still wearing masks and things like that. So we had to accommodate for all those sort of elements.
And so then beforehand, are you like kind of like how does it work? Are you storyboarding things out, or like how did that kind of approach to know? Or are you able to like make some decisions on the set as well, like on the day?
So how we approached this season, I had an additional amount of prep time prior to our first director, Andy Fleming, and we really spent as much time as we could going through it and really looking at not necessarily storyboarding, but sort of going through the scripts and like blocking, like thinking, how do we want to approach these scenes, literally scene by scene, episode by episode, because they were doing three in a row. So that was really difficult. And then we had another, our second director that came in, same sort of thing, using our weekends to kind of prep. They would come up with ideas of, this is how we want to approach it. We want Steadicam, we want a crane, we want this. But then we'd also get a curveball, thrown at us where a location would switch. So we were doing a lot of like really on the fly decisions. And just sort of being open to changing things, and knowing that these are the things that we're dealing with, and it's okay, and we just need to approach it. It's such a light show, it's such a fun show. So being able to sort of switch and switch gears in a moment with actors that have been doing this for years, and just seasoned, everybody sort of just fell in line. Like we had a couple of hiccups here and there, but nothing that we couldn't get through.
Mm-hmm. You worked, I mean, you worked on so many shows, like your background before being a cinematographer. I know you worked on like Gossip Girl and Carrie Diaries and the Sopranos and Younger. These are all shows that I feel like are making up like the fabric of what people think of New York on television, or the New York tri-state area on television. in the last like decade or so. I guess like what have you like being on these shows and like what have you learned about New York visually that you like to like maybe is a good way to represent it or whatever when you see it on for TV? Because I just find that amazing. Like your resume is great. So yeah, I was just like curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, you have all the iconic parts of New York City that you just have to shoot, to prove that you're not in LA or somewhere else. And, so even on the streets, I mean, you just have to, visually remembering where we've gone for, I mean, I've been in this business, 20 years now. And every time it's like, oh, if we have to shoot the Empire State Building one more time, but, when you have another director, there's a different angle, there's a different approach. And when you're shooting bridges and stuff like that, or on a train, I've been on a million trains on different shows, and it's like I don't know how many times you can shoot this and make it look different, but the climate and things that are the elements make it. You love New York City, so anywhere you put it and turn the camera on, I mean, it should, if you know what you're doing, it should look like New York City.
Right. So you meant like you've been doing this for like 20 years and for getting the opportunity here to be cinematographer. I mean, can you talk about like what that meant here and for you, personally and at this point in your career to get this opportunity?
Chris, it meant a number of things. Like, my first thought is, yes, you get an opportunity to shoot as a cinematographer. That's I hope it's every camera person's dream, right? But, I didn't even know that film and television was going to be a part of my life. I mean, I didn't go to school for film and television, and I kind of fell into it. I met someone that worked at Panavision. So Panavision was kind of my school. And then I guess after like 3 or 4 years, you start to get comfortable and you're like, okay, well, I actually know what I'm doing. Start off as a loader and become a second, a first AC, and then you become an operator. And I think you get so used to doing what you're doing and wanting to be really good at it. So John Thomas giving me the opportunity to shoot younger, it was like, wait a minute, I've arrived. Like, what does this mean? Like, what's actually going on here? And also being a cinematographer who happens to be Black in this business was a big deal, not only for me, but for people that are coming behind me and people that were also before me. I think that it took on more than just being a cinematographer on a hit show. It was more like we're here, and how do we, sort of move this ball down the field and create opportunities for other people. So I saw it more than just me shooting a TV show and then going to shoot another TV show. It meant so much more to me than just that.
Yeah, and then so like, can you talk a little about how you want to like pay it forward, for lack of a better word, or whatever? Like, like looking at like younger people, especially like Black filmmakers or whatever, who are gonna like want to maybe don't even see it as an attainable goal, and like obviously you can prove that it is by being a cinematographer yourself. So like, can you talk a little about like how you like are thinking about that?
Sure. I mean, I think part of it is looking at. And here's one of the things that I sort of thought about quite a bit is when we talk about cinematographers, a lot of times we put a qualifier before it. So we'll say a Black cinematographer, right? Which to me sometimes can be, in certain situations, it will mean that you shoot Black TV shows, right? But if you're a cinematographer who happens to be Black or happens to be from another country, then it puts you in place with all the other cinematographers, and it doesn't separate you. So I think part of that is just having that language and being able to speak to that. And the other thing is, I started an organization called Bridge Builder Cinematic Arts, and that's how I'm paying it forward. Is I started that in 2016 to teach high school kids from marginalized communities how to break into this business. But more importantly, people who don't see you in positions don't think that those are attainable goals, right? Whether it be women, people of color, whatever it is, if you don't see people that look like you and that's not the norm, then people don't see this business as a viable business for people from marginalized communities. So I think that's why, like, being a cinematographer and getting the opportunity on a show like this has made it much more important to continue this work.
Yeah, really great. Hollis Meminger, cinematographer for Younger, season 7 is available. It's on now on Paramount Plus. Thank you so much, Hollis. Appreciate it. And stick around. We'll do the panel here shortly.
Thank you.